Hi guys, I'm Kimberly from Fat Quarter Shop Flosstube, and today I'm going to show you how you can take a cross stitch and make it into a pillow. The piece we're using today is called American Spirit. It was released to our Stitch Quarterly subscription members, and it's a wonderful piece, and I'm going to show you how you can put it into a pillow. If you're looking for the pattern and you're not in the club, it will be available on our website at the very end of July. I wanted to show you this beautiful piece that Priscilla Blaine put together for me, and Cheryl stitched the piece and Priscilla finished it for me. So if you want information on how this is put together and all the information on this finishing, you would go to priscillas2000.blogspot.com. And if you want to turn it into a pillow, kind of what you need is, obviously you need your stitched piece. We're going to start with about half a yard of fabric, a Kimberly pillow that's 5.5 by 9.5, and I have a little bit of embellishments. We'll figure out what we need as we go. I also just have basic sewing supplies like pins, a ruler, a rotary cutter, and a friction pin. Any kind of marking pin will work, and we're going to kind of just make this up as we go. So let's get started. So my stitched piece finishes about 4.5 by 5, give or take. This is stitched on 25 count Lugana, and so we're going to use a 5.5 by 9.5 inch pillow, and what I thought would be cute would be to cut the top and the bottom just for the piece, and then just add to the sides this red and use that as the backing. So that's what we're going to do today. Since my pillow finishes at 5.5 by 9.5, I'm going to have my finished piece top 6 by 10 so that the pillow will fit. And so the first thing I'm going to do is I want from here to here to be about 6 inches. The very center of the design is right here between the red and the white stripe. So I am going to lay a Creative Grids ruler on here, and I'm going to line that line right on that center, and I'm going to use the 3 inch because that's the center, so 3 inch, and I'm going to cut. I'm going to turn it around, and I'm going to use the 6 inch line on my ruler and cut. So now that I cut it, it looks like I have too much space here and too much space here. So this is about 3/8 of an inch, and I'm going to do the same here. So then it's going to be about 5.25 instead of 6. And then I'm going to trim so they're both the same. And then from here, I'm also going to trim about 3/8 of an inch from the last stitch. So I'm just kind of eyeballing it. I'm using this line at the top to keep it straight. And with cross stitch fabric, you can see that the stripe kind of goes a little bit, so I'm going to kind of pull it. And so the point of cutting this is we're just kind of cutting this down so that we can add a border, and we'll figure out what we're going to do next. So for this pillow, we're going to kind of cut down our piece, and we'll be adding a skinny border to the top and bottom and a wider border to the sides. So we have our center cut, and now we're going to add some borders. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to cut my half yard in half. And then one of the pieces I'm just going to set aside, and we will use that to make the backing in a little bit. And then from this piece, I'm going to just cut one strip 1.5 inches wide and one strip 3.5 inches wide. And that is going to be too big, but we will trim down our pillow later. So a 1.5 inch strip and a 3.5 inch strip. And then we're going to cut these two strips in half. And then what we will do is we're going to add the top and bottom first, and then we will add our sides. So when you add, first we're going to add the top and bottom, and I'm going to leave it long, and I'm going to use Wonder clips instead of pins, and I'm just going to put the little clips here. And then we're going to go to the sewing machine, and I'm going to stitch with a 1/4 inch seam, and I'm going to stitch about a 2.0 stitch length, and I'll start and stop before the stitching, and I will stitch with the fabric on top. So I'm using a 1/4 inch foot. I will start and stop my stitching on the fabric and just stitch straight down. And I will stop after, and then rotate. And now we will press. So to press, I'm going to press down, press to one side. If you don't want to iron directly on your cross stitch, you can kind of place your iron where it doesn't go directly on the cross stitch by kind of lifting it up if you want to. I don't mind ironing on mine. Now what I will do is I'm going to trim the edge. And then trim the other edge. And again, we're making this bigger, so you can just trim it down when you are done. And that looks really cute. I like my fabric choices. I'm going to add these two the same exact way. And now we're going to press, and then we will trim it down. So I like to set my seam by just putting your iron right on where you stitched, and then when you press to one side, it will lie flatter. And now we can trim. So now we're going to trim this down to about 6 by 10, give or take a little bit. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to trim from the top and bottom 3/4 inches away from the stitches. So I've got my line, and I will cut, and then about 3/4 of an inch, and so that'll come out to about 6 1/4, which is fine. It'll just be a tiny bit wider. And then from the side, we'll cut about 2.5 inches. And I'm just using the lines on my Creative Grids rulers. And I'm going to line up the top, and then I'm lining up the seam also so that it's straight. And since it's a pillow, it doesn't have to be exactly straight. It just needs to be somewhat straight. So there's 2.5, and so I've lined up at the top, and then I've lined up here. And that is our pillow top. So now you can see how cute this is looking for the top of our pillow. It's just slightly bigger, and you can either embellish or you can just move to the backing. I'm gonna embellish a little bit, and I really like this vintage trim by Lori Holt in the cloud colorway. And I think that will look really cute here on both sides. So I'm gonna do that first, and then after that, we'll see if we need buttons. So the first thing I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna cut some Ric Rac slightly longer, and then we're just gonna go to the sewing machine and stitch it down. So to add the Ric Rac, I changed my thread to be pure white so that it will blend in. And I'm just gonna kind of I'm not gonna pin or anything, I'm just gonna use my fingers to keep it in place. I'm gonna start stitching on the Ric Rac off of the fabric so that any loose ends, loose threads are off. And I'm just gonna stitch right in the center. I've got my stitch length at about 2 inches, and I'm just gonna go really nice and slow. And I'm just stitching right in that center. And I'm gonna stitch all the way off. And you can barely see that thread. So it is important to try to match the thread color to your Ric Rac, and we'll do the other side the same way. So now I'm going to just clip off the edge of the Ric Rac. And since I started stitching off of the fabric, I won't have any loose threads. And now I'm going to do an envelope back. You could put some fray check here if you wanted to kind of keep it in place, but I don't really want to. So I'm going to take the remaining piece of fabric I have and just cut it in half. And this is how I do pillow backs. I just wing it. So I literally am gonna go to the ironing table and iron a crease right here. So these have 2 creases. And so I'm gonna overlap them. So I use the line on my ruler. So I've got this is one side. This is the other, making sure your folds are in the center. And I'm gonna overlap it about 3.5 inches. And I'm going to place this on top, and I'm going to find the center and then put the center in between here, put it face down, and then we're going to trim the backing to be the same size. And then we're going to trim our backing to be the same size as our pillow top. I'll put a couple of pins in. And this is just how I do my backings. I just kind of fold, and then I'll use my leftovers for my scrap pin. And now we're going to go to the sewing machine, and we're going to stitch all the way around a 1/4 inch seam. I'll show you how to pivot in your corners, and you don't have to leave an opening because we can turn it inside out with this. When I got to the machine, I realized I need to add a couple more reinforcement pins right here so that this does not get lost in our stitching. And I'm going to start on the bottom, and I am going to stitch a 1/4 inch away all the way around to the first corner. And I'm using a 1/4 inch foot. You're going to stop and start about a 1/4 inch away from the edge. Pivot. So I need to go a little bit further. Pivot, and just keep going. And when you get to where you previously started, just stitch over those stitches. And now we can open our pillow. So now we have this all looking pretty, and what I like to do is I like to clip my corners. So I'm just going to clip little triangles off in each corner. And from there you just put your hand in and flip it out. Ooh, it looks so good. And then what I like to do is I just use my finger to try to poke the holes in the corner. That's what I do first. So do that first. Sometimes I can do that and then just be done. I don't have to use a tool. We'll see how good my corners look. By doing that little triangle, it does help it have a nice corner. So there is my pillow, and you can see my corners look a little bit circly. So I've got this Hera marker. It's not meant for corners, but I like to use it for corners because I don't like to use a chopstick or anything really sticky because I'm afraid I will poke a hole through it. So I kind of use the edge of that since it's not so sharp, and I'm just going to push my corners out. You can use a chopstick. I mean, some people use scissors, but I've poked many a hole through a corner. So I've learned my lesson on that before. And then I'm going to put it in my pillow, put my pillow in, and then I'm going to see what I think about adding a button. So you just put it in one side. And then you just pull this. And it fits perfect. So that's kind of how you do it. And I think it's super cute. Now, one thing that we could do is you could add some buttons on the side so we can kind of see how that would look. You could put some buttons. I think it'd probably be distracting. So I'm going to leave the button option off. And I have this cute American Spirit pillow. Pick up the pattern at Fat Quarter Shop. Subscribe to Fat Quarter Shop Flosstube, and I'll see you next time.